Hi everybody, this week on the Family Woodworker, my son Matt actually dives into this insane pattern for a 3D wood art project that he had planned. It's an amazing amount of work. Stick with us and we'll show you the steps. And we want to mention this is also one of the ideas we talked about in our early 2019 small workshop plans video, and we really wanted to dive into a project like this. And credit where credit's due, this idea and a lot of the instructions are out on lumberjacks.com, where we're going to be creating trapezoids and also these small triangles to put the pieces together. So, to start out with, this was a combination of maple, cherry, walnut, and for a small trim piece, some tiger wood. And first things first, the boards were picked out, were pretty flat, but they weren't all the same thickness. So we took a second to get them planed down to the same thickness and also to make sure that the surfaces were ready for glue up. The next step is that each one of these pieces is going to be cut into a 3-inch strip because ultimately it's going to be glued together. And so here's the cherry, the walnut, and eventually the maple. And we really trust the table saw. We've mentioned this in other videos. When you set it at 90 degrees, we get a great cut.
Gluing these together. This is going to go on top of it when this dries and planed.
So we don't have a jointer in the shop, but that 60-tooth blade on the table saw gives us a clean edge for us to glue up. And I keep saying us, but Matt basically did this whole project himself. It was a tremendous amount of work effort. I really needed to ask him how many hours it took in total. Now it's like unboxing here on Christmas morning. And one more pass on the planer just to get the glue off. He wasn't really taking any thickness off the board at all. Lots of glue with a surface this large. But it's not that kind of glue, so everybody can relax. And so on the very bottom there's another piece of plywood and one more on top.
Just to protect the two boards so I don't put any clamp marks into it.
And so I love comments from other woodworkers, and this is a true statement. You never have enough clamps.
Okay.
And we let this dry overnight. Now, to get a 60-degree trapezoid corner or a triangle cut, you need to set the blade at 30 degrees. And so we took special care to make sure that it measured out exactly at 30 degrees because all these pieces eventually have to get glued together to form a perfect triangle. And you can see over on the back bench a series of those fresh trapezoids that he cut with the individual pieces of wood. Now here's the sandwich that he's just going to cut into 3 pieces, and ultimately these sandwiched pieces are going to represent the very small triangles that'll go in the center of each section. The cuts never end. So in order to get that small triangle center, he first made this initial cut on the edge to give him that 30-degree angle, or overall 60 degrees. And then he'll go through a second time to actually cut the dimensions of the triangle. And I have to tell you, I was watching him do this, and you have to really measure this thing like 5 times and test it to make sure that your cuts for, let's say, in this particular case, this diamond or this triangle center, come out with the exact dimensions that you need so that everything can glue up together tightly. And you'll see what I mean here in a minute. And there's that triangle center with walnut and tigerwood on the very top. This one will be maple. And here's the cherry with the tigerwood on top. Now he's showing the walnut piece here. So 3 different color combinations for the center, and then you'll get 3 different color combinations for the trapezoids, and everything's laid out here. Now on Lumberjacks, you'll have to see the pattern, which they detail, and how to actually glue these pieces together in order to give you that 3D look. And before glue up, this is what one section would look like. So the second part of this effort is going to be building a jig so that he can actually do the glue up of these triangle pieces. Because if you think about it, there's really no easy or great way to put clamps on these things to hold them together. So you've got to provide some support against those 60-degree sides so that you can actually squeeze them together. And in order to do that, you had to have this jig. So he's just using MDF to create a couple blocks like this, and that's the frame shown here.
This is my test glue up. Let's see how it looks.
And so it worked out pretty well, but you have to have this frame, and actually we use some packing tape here.
Looks pretty good. These are all the cut pieces at 1 foot in length. These are the combinations in which you will have to glue them together. Okay, I'm gluing up my first triangular log. It's 2 walnuts, maple, and a cherry center with the tigerwood triangle in the middle.
And I started to mention the packing tape. It's a very shiny tape that we had to find something. We thought about duct tape, but the packing tape didn't take up a lot of space, and it prevents the glue from really attaching. So we watched how difficult it was to actually remove a triangle from the jig, but the packing tape makes it a lot easier. And in fact, I think he had to pull out the wooden hammer a couple of times to give it a whack to free it up from the actual jig. But this wound up working pretty well. One of the other things that he noticed when we started to see the assembly take shape is that the MDF, for as thick as it is, tended to flex a little bit with clamping. So we wound up having to use clamps on the sides, on the top, to squeeze everything together. And so he did a pretty good job figuring this out just to get the engineering right, to get a good clamp. And you can see the glue finally squeeze out in the center there. So here's the individual logs. And the other thing that he really tried to do was keep them numbered so that he could follow the pattern that they had to be assembled in order to give you that 3D shape. So with a little sanding here just to knock off the glue, not trying to take down the dimension here at all, just trying to keep it flat on the belt sander. Really hard to do with hand tools. This is a really difficult project.
Alright, it's time to cut these up in little hockey pucks. Make sure to number each one of the patterns. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
And each one of those, again, different combination of wood, so really important to keep them sorted out. He also made an observation. We thought about trying to cut this on the table saw. The blade would almost go all the way through the height of these triangles, but it takes off a lot of material, and he was trying to get as many of these cuts as possible. So the bandsaw just removes less material, and it wound up giving him more of these triangles to work with.
Alright, I just cut them all up. I was able to get 15 little pucks out of the 1 foot length cubes that I made. As you can see, they need a little bit of sanding before I can start putting them together. And I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. It's going to take forever, but you know, all in all, they look pretty good. It's the last jig on the remaining MDF. Got to create 2 of these to hold this all together. It's roughly 5 inches in total, and I got to cut out everything in here. What it'll do is it'll basically grab this corner and it'll tuck in there nice and grip it, clamp both ends, and a couple clamps here, and it holds it all in a nice straight even line. Make sure to number them and lay it all out before you even start gluing it all up. This is row A, and row B.
Still, even with the layout, it's really difficult to see how that pattern is going to come together. And you definitely need the jig in order to, again, do anything with these triangle shapes, to get it all squeezed together, to get it all locked in pretty tight. So it's a pain in the butt. And once again, this whole project took just a ton of time, working on it part-time and weekends. I think overall it took a couple of months to just create this piece. So here's the individual rows laid out. And if you look, you can start to see the box pattern kind of fall out. You have to look at it for a second. Then you can see those white boxes and the dark walnut boxes kind of stick out. And then just clamped up to pull those rows together. Now, one of the things that we didn't wind up showing in the video is the selection of the border and to get it trimmed. And Matt wound up going with walnut on the perimeter. And just after getting it cut and adding those walnut borders, this is what the product looked like. And it took, because as best he could in terms of cutting on the bandsaw, there's still a lot of high spots that need to be ground down. So there was a lot of sanding that had to take place with this thing. And it was too wide to fit through the planer. And he and I talked about it, and we were worried about the planer actually taking chips off. But look at the pattern. It's amazing. It really looks fantastic, both close-up and far away. I mean, the detail is just amazing on this piece. And we are really looking forward to hanging it up on the wall. It's just above the mantle at the cabin right now. What a great addition. Thanks to Matt. Hey, we really hope you enjoyed the video. It was a lot of work. Congrats to Matt, and thanks for watching.